Howdy, survivors! How's it hanging? The reality hasn't yet turned into a boring parody on a video game. Good, let it stay that way. So that things don't get unbearably boring, we'll indulge you with the second video about Fallout. Though the topic is not exactly that joyous. We'll be talking about how the series died. Yeah, not cool, but it is what it is. In the last video, we touched base on the gameplay design principles that were used in the creation of the original trilogy. We also looked at how these principles were treated by Bethesda and Obsidian. Today, we're gonna continue with the story. We'll see what the fourth part did with the franchise's legacy, what its advertising campaign resulted in, and in what deep and utter vault the series has found itself after Fallout 76. Today, we'll tell you how Bethesda betrayed themselves and went along even with the trend they had always been avoiding like the plague. How Fallout became a source of great fun for casuals and Minecraft stans. And how the roleplay put its head on the chopping block for the sake of better action and bigger fanbase, yet it was all for naught. Or was it? Today, we'll be answering all these questions. You're on Dragmatic, please subscribe and smash the bell button as we're about to begin. There's a popular rumor on the internet these days. It is told that after the release of New Vegas, the developers from Obsidian didn't receive their bonus. The reason for that was the score on Metacritic. It stopped at the mark of 84, when Bethesda required a minimum of 85. So rumor has it that Todd Howard paid nothing the guys from Obsidian, who, in their turn, despite being understandably offended, decided not to tell stories outside the class. While in the class itself, there was now a question: if the game has turned out to be such a success, is it worth doing anything by its standards? Apparently, no one cared about the player's score, as the answer was no. Fallout 4 came out and immediately became the bone of contention among the players. Even those gamers who only got acquainted with the universe thanks to the third installment weren't exactly pleased with the successor. The game reduced the importance of the role-playing system, instead focusing on the action component. Todd Howard used to say the following about such decisions in the promotional materials: "Let's have our cake and ice cream. You rip apart the world and then you can build what you want." By the word cake, Todd probably means role-playing, while ice cream stands for the shooting part. And here, one can notice a discrepancy, as even Bethesda's most diehard fan would notice how much Fallout 4 shifted the accent towards combat. At the same time, the game can be beaten with 0 kills, but it will require a lot of effort. As you can see for yourself, the playthrough can be found on YouTube. The point about ripping the world is also tricky. Here Todd meant a gameplay innovation. The game allows you to build your own base using various scrap. What Todd proposes you to do is to gather this scrap and debris. Well, that's exactly what was expected from another installment of the once great RPG. But how did it end up like this? Quite simple. Even during the making of Fallout 3, the developers used the so-called modular level design. The designer makes a couple of models for, say, a dungeon, and then reshuffles them so that each dungeon would appear unique. That's how the system was like originally, but in the new Fallout, the developers decided to go that extra mile and came up with the Modular System 2.0. The game's lead designer, Joel Burgess, even compared it to Lego, the tool with the widest range of application, in his opinion. Apparently, after having played their own bricks for long enough and finding the vibe of renowned construction toys to it, the developers decided to let the gamer have some fun with it as well. The gamer's consent was optional. As a result, we have Minecraft with good graphics and extremely poor features. But we were expecting a Fallout. The difference of approach between the creators of New Vegas and Fallout 4 is striking. While the former focused on the thorough development of storylines and role-playing elements, the latter are concerned about how to make and release the game as quickly as possible. No surprise that those developers went along with the trend and switched to the dialogue wheel. By doing so, they not only eliminated the possibility of role-playing, but also made life easier for themselves. Now, in every dialogue, the player will only have 4 options to choose from instead of God knows how many, as it used to be. The developers would boast that they've written more lines of dialogue for Fallout 4 than for the threequel and Skyrim combined. 111,000 to be precise. Only, to be honest, I haven't noticed such a variety. Maybe because although there are more lines, there are more NPCs as well, and the interaction with every and each of them is reduced to the same 4 lines and 1 extra, provided they have the right perk, that is. So what do we get? We get a victim of ambitions that was trying to follow a relevant trend, for its time, and thus deprived itself of ant personality. This is not a Fallout. A shooter with a vestige of gameplay from Minecraft that uses the Fallout license, maybe, but not a Fallout. Though, I must admit, the game had pretty good ambience. Of course, the music. Now that was awesome. Not only the licensed playlist, but also Einon Zur's works. Personally, I got the impression that he was the only one in Bethesda who hadn't forgotten what art is. He also understood perfectly well what the spirit of a real Fallout really was. Fallout has always been about an alternative. It's present even in the sound design. Instead of hard drums, I can use a piano, especially if it adds to the atmosphere, or the cello. The cello is an instrument that conveys a sense of loneliness, and Fallout is a game about loneliness. But Fallout's 4th installment didn't quite hit the rock bottom. In fact, it was just a herald of the apocalypse. Yet, there was something peculiar that came in during the advertising campaign. Before launching the main title, Bethesda released Fallout Shelter for mobile devices. The situation around it was a tricky one. On the one hand, it is an addition to the main title, made specifically for mobile devices that doesn't pretend to be anything more than a source of entertainment during a morning dump or trip to work. But here's the question. Is such an addition really necessary for a deep role-playing game with an army of fans who never gave a single fuck about one-button farm games? The answer would be negative. And had Bethesda announced this game earlier, say a couple of months before the presentation of the main title, gamers wouldn't have approved of such a move. But Todd Howard presented the addition right on the E3 and announced that it was coming out the same day.
What's even more exciting is that this game is coming out on the App Store tonight.
So people immediately started downloading Shelter to their devices, even orthodox fans, just for the hell of it. And what they got was actually pleasantly surprising. Mobile Fallout turned out to be an addictive, well-made, fun game for several hours. The lack of tangible ambitions helped create a game that is largely sold by its recognizable style and simple, yet well-worked gameplay. At the same time, this title doesn't have any claims to the part of the main story. That is, apart from the style, there is little that unites it with the central series. And that's great! This helped to simultaneously keep the old fans and attract new ones, who don't want to dig into who exchanged atomic strikes with whom. Fallout Shelter was kind of a marketing training for us, to give people the taste of Fallout before they could actually buy Fallout 4. Ironically, Shelter turned out to be more popular than the game it was supposed to promote. Marketing-wise, everything was done on the highest level, with the free-to-play base and loads of content. Gameplay-wise, the game is a mix of Little Computer People, Sims, XCOM, and Fallout. Here, it is important to pay attention to the XCOM reference, as it was this game that inspired Tim Kaine and his team while creating the original Fallout. That is, the mobile spin-off is more related to the roots of the series than the official new title. We could laugh if it wasn't so sad. The taste that Paris was talking about was okay for a casual mobile game, but bored you with the lusciousness in an official part of the series. So, the shift towards Minecraft and the reduction of the RPG component scared away most of the old fans, while the new ones were arriving reluctantly because Shelter, despite its appealing universe, gameplay-wise was a completely different game. It wasn't easy to shift from nothing but resource management to an unfinished shooter with RPG and constructor elements. Thus, although the game wasn't a financial failure, Fallout 4 that is, Bethesda did suffer a huge reputational damage. Who knew? It was just the beginning. Fallout 76 turned out to be a complete and utter failure, not only for Bethesda's policy, but for its game design as well. Before the release, the developers accelerated the hype train to supersonic speeds, as they do. However, players still weren't exactly sure what to be hyped about. Take the live action trailer, the animation. Everything indicates that the game will be about having fun with your friends. But the thing is, that's not what Fallout is. It's not the kind of universe where characters watch the earth die under caps of nuclear mushrooms and smile. Gamers simply couldn't get what kind of product they were being sold. The vibe of the promotional materials didn't match the familiar atmosphere. But the thought of exploring a large, nicely recreated post-apocalyptic world was exciting. I mean, who wouldn't want to explore the new Virginia with their bros? Personally, I wouldn't mind, as long as the journey competently combines the setting with the features of multiplayer role-playing games. Unfortunately, the game failed at both points. It seems that Bethesda's failed at every stage. Just remember how they interacted with the community after the game's release. First thing that comes to mind are the preventive apologies regarding the quality of the product. The game is huge and we're a small team, so excuse us for all the bugs. One would think the sheer audacity of these people, but the fun has just begun. You probably heard about the story with the $200 collector's edition and the canvas bags, but just to reiterate, some players ordered an edition that included the game, a full-size power armor helmet, a map, and a bag. The latter was the most expensive element. It had already been handed out to bloggers at various expos, so ordinary gamers were already salivating. Quality material, impressive looks, and all that. But when the bags had actually reached the customers, they all turned into pumpkins. Some sack made of cheap nylon. What? Hold on a second. There's a case that had a similar outcome. A mere week after release, the game was already being sold with quite a discount. Those fans who purchased the game for the full price were understandably flabbergasted and asked Bethesda to comment on the situation. So what was the answer? As with the bags, the answer came in the form of 500 atoms, a $5 worth of the in-game currency. So here we have it, this obnoxiously audacity that perfectly shows the company's attitude to its customers. Or here's another one. A player got a bug that prevents his character from dying. When he contacted the support about his problem, all he was advised to do was use the Pip-Boy and check the active effects. Naturally, he didn't find shit there. But these are all personal stories. So how about the case when users' personal data from Bethesda's support website got leaked? This is no joke. First name, last name, bank card number, everything. That's some crazy ass shit. And most importantly, the story intertwines with the bags we've just talked about. Because thanks to them, it was possible to find the breach in the website's security system. That's the point. Don't bullshit people. Otherwise, you'll have troubles both with your fan base and with the law. There was a case when lawyers started investigating into Bethesda's chicanery. In the end, it was all settled down, but it's better not to jerk the chain of consumer rights. The dumbest thing that all of this happened a month or two after the release. Up next will be the ban of the most diehard fan, as he has farmed too much ammo, and the story with the local genocide of the bourgeois. The conflict will be centered around the completely useless paid subscription introduced by Bethesda. However, some players will be paying for it and confuse other gamers, who won't hesitate to express their confusion by giving the subscription members a couple of lead or plasma sandwiches as soon as they see them in-game. The case with the Battle Royale will also speak volumes. It will be introduced, everyone will like it, and 2 years later it will be shut down. I mean, yeah, right on! Did you guys come to the online Fallout to have fun? Are you nuts? The whole point of this game's existence is to show you that there could be something worse than Fallout 4. So you should have waited with clutching your head, the worst was still to come. Okay, jokes aside. Besides, there's hardly any reason to laugh. The gaming community watched this shit show for a year, or a year and a half, but with the release of the Wastelanders update, the fog of negativity around the game stopped thickening and, surprisingly, started to dissipate. The game now had NPCs. Before the update there were none, and 24 players would just wander aimlessly around the map in search of things to do. A full-fledged dialogue system, factions, and most importantly, the story. However, all the innovations were like a poultice on a wooden leg. If you would think that the online Fallout has solved its problems, then joke's on you. The game has far more fundamental flaws, which lay at the level of primordial game design. What do I mean? First of all, the classic Bethesda level design. Yes, the modular one. Let me remind you, with such game design, the player still notices after a certain amount of time that he's being fooled. This approach is more or less relevant for a single player game. In a multiplayer project, it won't work at all. There are more players, hence they simultaneously explore more locations and then also share their findings, thus letting other players know that the places they have visited are surprisingly similar to those visited by others. Of course, this could have been fixed by making a map larger than the one in Fallout 4, and the developers even seem to have done exactly that. But the situation didn't change. The tools used in the creation of this map were the same. Therefore, now there were just more similar places. Shooting was the core of the new game, yet no improvements were made in comparison with the fourth part in this regard. Quite the opposite, there was a downgrade, which until now seemed virtually impossible. So in the end, we have a funny thing, which is honestly hard to believe. The number of tools for role-playing has been reduced, which seemed impossible. If you look at the previous game in the series, well, the shooter component wasn't any more fun. Now, the situation with the role-playing has been slightly improved. But here's the gag. Bethesda's game designers have mostly been working with single-player titles. Therefore, the improvements they've made are intended for a single-player game, not a multiplayer title. That's why the newly added stories quickly lose the community's interest. People complete them and that's it. In the book, Glued to the Games, How Video Games Draw Us In and Hold Us Spellbound, it's noted how in MMOs, quests are constructed in a special way. Game designers update the list of active quests so often that it never gets empty. The gamer either completes one quest that immediately starts a new one, or gets 2 or 3 new ones after completing the previous. This is done so that the player doesn't lose fun and the sense of progression, thus he will spend more time before the monitor, all to the benefit of the online title. In the case of Fallout 76, as you have probably guessed, everything is different. Moreover, let me point out that the developers started to make the game more fun by resorting to role-playing and storytelling, thus pushing combat aside. And that's what leads the game to a dead end. It turned its coat, what now makes it nor a shooter because of all the updates, nor an RPG because it wasn't one from the very start. The engine, in its turn, doesn't allow to bring a whole new gameplay to the game, as it was with Fortnite for example, which, mind you, was originally a zombie shooter. So the project is treading in place, trying to maintain a precarious balance through constant injections of regular updates. So, as soon as the support for Fallout 76 ceases to exist, the game is likely doomed. unless gamers will find a way to entertain themselves, which is actually possible, as evidenced by examples like the staging of Hamlet in the game, carried out by most passionate Bethesda fans and obviously Shakespeare.
Wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or, if thou wilt not, be but my sworn love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet.
Now that's interesting. The only bad thing is that such initiatives have nothing to do with the developers. So what do we have in the end? A weird experiment made God knows for what audience? A multiplayer game should be like a perpetual motion machine, maneuvering between a fairly interesting gameplay that would keep the gamer occupied for a long time, and a story that would provide a sense of general progression of the in-game world. Fallout 76 shoots, but instead of hitting one of the previously mentioned qualities, it hits itself in the leg. But there is a silver lining. No knees were harmed. This allows the project to live and even evolve, although it's unclear where all of it is going. After all, there is no way out of the grave, and that's exactly where the last Fallout has driven the whole series. Maybe the rescue team from Obsidian will once again patch things up, as there are more and more rumors about a second Vegas. Only time will tell. At the moment, the series has only 3 excellent games, 1 not great not terrible, I'm talking about the third part, and 2 terrible ones, with the last one created solely to prove that there's always a deeper pit. So let me tell you, gird your loins, survivors, don't show any signs of disappointment. Todd Howard will see them and heed my words. He'll show you that things weren't actually that bad. That's all, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, smash the like button, and share with us in the comments which Fallout game is your personal favorite. Until next time.